Howdy everybody, David Minkin here, starting player with Connect More, and welcome to a new format of video for me, different than what you might be expecting in Avoid the Rules or 3TV. And today I'm featuring Intel. Now I'm doing a slightly different format. We'll call it a talking head piece, if you will, or a bobblehead piece, or I like to refer to it as your local news format. Because what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be sitting here and I'm going to be talking about the game, but here to my left, your right, I'm going to be showing cool photos to get you excited and thumbnail images about the game, or perhaps a cat stuck in a tree. So you'll stay tuned to see what else is going to come on your Channel 4 local news. So this is a format that I'm going to be doing for Intel. Why? Because I don't actually have any little bits and pieces to play with for the game. I played the game several times on the Vassal module with the designers, and also another game with the publisher and Ludi Creations. So I don't have my usual kind of hand modeling bit that I like to do where I show moving the pieces and all that other kind of stuff, but instead I actually do have some digital photos of Intel that I will be posting here as I talk along to hopefully make my points more clear and for you to see what the game is all about. So that's the intent of this video. So let's just dive right on in and let's talk about, well, what is Intel? Well, before I get started, let's set up the theme a little bit. So right away, you need to turn your hat on to like an Ian Fleming kind of mode, a James Bond mode. This is where your head needs to be. Mission Impossible. Now, this picture here, James Bond, well, that just happens to be my wife's favorite picture of Bond, and Daniel Craig is her favorite Bond guy for obvious reasons. And this was the picture that actually got her to actually ask me to watch the movie with her, and then she got into the spy genre a little bit more. So, just as an aside, even though this cover looks really cool, I really like what they've done. It's simple, it's classic, it pulls me in to want to play this game. I think that we could have evened the demographics a little bit more in the board game industry had we put a picture like this on the cover instead. But I digress. So we want to be thinking Ian Fleming. You want to be thinking about these movies, where you're trying to go and you're trying to find information from somebody. You're trying to hunt down the bad guy. That's exactly what we're going to be doing in this game. So during this game, you're going to be assigned a role card. And everybody will be assigned a role card, but you don't know who is who at the beginning of the game. So you must be thinking, this must be a social deduction kind of game. And you might be thinking along something like The Resistance. And if you're thinking along those lines, you're absolutely right. So let's not limit ourselves to this genre, because the cool added part of this game is you as a spy, you're attending the ambassador's ball where he's showcasing himself and all of his great stuff. So you and the rest of the spies, or the people you're playing with, you show up to the ambassador's palace or headquarters, whatever you want to call it, and your mission, should you choose to accept it, is to find intelligence on the other spies and then to escape out of the ambassador's area without being detected. Well, that's one way to win. The second way you can win is by blowing up the other team's helicopters. Now, these victory conditions that I'm describing here are normally the case for what's referred to as the classic game. This game plays for 2 to 6 players, and so as you can tell now, we have the social deduction side of things, because when you jump into these headquarters and start running around, you need to figure out, well, who's on my side, who am I loyal to, and how can we help each other to achieve these victory conditions, and how can we do it in such a way that if the other people don't know or haven't figured out who they're loyal to or whose side they're on, how can we do it in such a way that it's not so obvious that just by default they figured out that they're on the same team. So you do have this social deduction side of things, but as you see, the headquarters of the ambassador is composed of 3 different levels, and when you spread out these levels, there are actions that you can actually do on each of these levels to help you earn information or glean information along the way to figure out who's on what side, and for you to grab information and to sort it all out. So I feel like I'm James Bond, sneaking around the headquarters, or like, Jason Bourne when he's at the Swiss embassy there, or the American embassy in Switzerland in the first one, and you're kind of hiding out on the ledge and the guys are coming and trying to find you. Like, you feel like that. So in addition to the social deduction side of things, you also have area movement and some hand management for some cards you're going to be collecting along the way, and some interactions and partnerships that are going to form. And so the neat thing about that is, sometimes for me, when I'm actually playing social deduction style of games, it's all based on personality. You're basically given a card, and based on that card, you're trying to interrogate people or lay low, or you're trying to, behave in a way that you wouldn't naturally behave because you're trying to cover yourself up. And especially when you start playing with the same group a lot of times, you can start recognizing that, oh, you must be, you know, whatever, the saboteur or whatever. But the cool thing about adding the actual gameplay element of it kind of goes more into the genre of saboteur. I'm not saying that the mechanics or anything are the same, but what I'm saying is the neat thing about this style of social game is that there are actual actions that you can take, and people might start going, well, why are you doing that? And they might start actually making inferences through the actions that you're taking, and not so much in the words that you're saying, which this style of game, it relies more on kind of the words that you're saying. In this style of game, it's both the words that you're saying, the trash talking that goes on, plus the actual actions in the game. And that's where Intel is. Intel has the social deduction side of things where you're trying to figure out, well, why are you doing this? But it also has this board component to it where you're moving your guy around. And all these rooms have special abilities that allow you to kind of tap into other people's actions, or they allow you to do things to be able to help progress your cause. So then people can start making inferences of why is he taking that action? So it has both sides of those things. So like for me, sometimes I view this style of game, the one con I have against it is that sometimes the more experienced player tends to be the most boisterous because they're the ones that are like, oh my goodness, how come you're not doing this? You should be doing this. And people are like, well, you are obviously a part of, you know, you're obviously a spy that's infiltrated the resistance. Why else are you so passionate about this? You know, I'm not bringing you on a mission. No, I'm not. And it goes, but it's not because they're trying to swing the game. They get frustrated by the newbies who are still trying to sort out, like, well, what am I supposed to do? How am I supposed to act? And so you can get a little bit of this. I found in the game that I played, you know, I was playing obviously with the designers who were very well skilled. There's a couple things that were lacking on the Vassal module. We didn't have face-to-face, so you didn't get a lot of that non-verbal communication that goes on. And then the other times, I found a lot of times they were chit-chatting and they were really getting into it, whereas I still trying to figure out, well, what room do I go into? How do I operate the Vassal module? How does all of this stuff work? And so it was hard for me. Sometimes I felt a little bit left behind, and that's one pitfall you'll find in any of the style of games is the noob sometimes might feel a little bit left behind because not only here are you trying to figure out the social deduction side of things, but when you get into the actual adding all of these different rooms and all of these different ways that the rooms can interact with each other, then you've got a whole new level of trying to understanding, and you're trying to sit there and operate and figure out the mechanics of the game, but then you kind of get lost in the social deduction side of things. So that's one con, especially in the early play. But the cool thing about Intel is they've kind of gotten rid of or eased that learning curve a little bit, because as I said before, this game plays from 2 to 6 players. But the cool thing that sets this game aside from some of these other games that I've played is the player count will dictate the module or the style of game that you're actually going to play. And I find that really enriching because, for example, if you're playing 4-player, the game is going to be divided into 2 teams. So there's going to be 2 of you will be given a nationality, one particular nationality, and the other 2 will be given randomly another type of nationality. So you got 2 different teams, so you're trying to figure out who's on your team and then try to work a little bit together to achieve the end goal. Now if you have 5 players, what's really cool is you still have these 2 teams of different nationalities, but you have what's referred to as an Interpol agent. So his goal is he's kind of against he's kind of against the other 2 teams. He's, you know, the only real good guy out of all of us, because technically we're all spies, we're all kind of bad. But what's cool is there's a new type of card that's integrated. It's got a blood stain on it. Now that indicates that this person actually has been indicated as a person of interest, if you will, by Interpol. So Interpol's sleuthing around at the ambassador's suite, and I don't know why he's there. Why was he invited? Because he's not, unless he's a dirty guy and he's actually providing the ambassador with other dirt. But that's a whole other story. His job is to arrest one person from each nationality. So he has to arrest one person from each team, and he has to arrest the correct person, the person with the blood-stained card. And so that's where that comes into effect. So that's pretty neat because it gives you a different dynamic, and you might really like trying to be this Interpol guy because it's you trying to, you know, sleuth out it all. And then there's, for 6-player modules, much like 4-player, is that now you got 2 teams with 3 agents on them, so you're trying to figure that out. And then for 2 players, more of a semi-co-op, and you're trying to, the actual end game game is different before I describe the end game as being either escaping with the intelligence of the other team, and I'll describe what that is in a second, or by blowing up the other team's helicopter. Now with a two-player game, it operates as a semi-co-op type game, and so there's a variety of common objectives and competitive objectives that both of you are trying to compete against each other to achieve, and you get a certain amount of points for each one. And the first player to achieve a certain number of points, I believe it's 7, actually wins. I have not played the two-player module, so I'm not really going to get into it much detail. Now in a three-player game, each player is assigned a different nationality, but 2 of those nationalities are actually loyal to each other, but you don't know that at the beginning of the game, so you're kind of running around going, okay, well, who do I trust, where should I go, and you're trying to seek out this information to figure out if you're on one of the sides that are loyal to another side, or if you're like the third wheel, you're like the odd man out. Now, normally when you use the term third wheel, you know pretty quick you're the third wheel, but the cool thing about this game is you really got to dig around and try to figure that out. And then the victory condition is much like it was for the 4-player game as I described. Once you figure out if you are allied or not with a certain individual, you can take the intelligence of the team that you're not allied with and get on the helicopter and get the heck out of there. Now, sometimes you don't need to know who your allegiances are. You might just have some intelligence of a different nationality that's not yours and go, I don't know, but I'm just going to go anyhow. And as soon as somebody makes that decision to get on that heli and fly away, the game ends immediately. And so there it's called a leap of faith. You're not really sure, but it may be a way just to get on with it. I did play the 3-player module once with the designers and I found it fantastic. I really like that element of trying to figure out, well, who's on whose side, because normally you could gather one piece of information, but getting that confirmation relied a little bit more sometimes on the social deduction side of things, or relied on you going to appropriate rooms to actually get the information. I'm going to describe the rooms to you in a little second. And in addition to the 3rd-player module, I talked about the 4-player module. There's also what they call the classic and the beginner, and I think the beginning of this whole talk about the different modules, my point I wanted to make was the nice thing is they do have a beginner module, which is designed as kind of a practice mission, if you will. Rather than trying to escape from the embassy, you're trying to download a virus or an antivirus into the computer room. So it helps you learn some of the rooms and what they do and how the gameplay kind of works out. So when you get into the more of the advanced classic game, you're not so much focused on the mechanics of the game, you're more focused on what's going on above the table, off the table, what's going on here, why are people making certain decisions, and then trying to decide what decisions you need to make to better your progress. So they did a really great job like that. Another game that I think does a great job of that, and I'm just throwing this out here so you can be familiar with what I'm trying to talk about, is Flashpoint Fire Rescue. Their rules are set up really great. They have the first, here's your basic rules, now you can play, and then you play that a couple times and they say, okay, now you got the advanced rules and you can roll in different special abilities, fire engines, ambulances, all that kind of stuff. And this game is very similar. They go, here's your introductory 4-player game, and once you get comfortable with the building and how to move around, then you can take the 4-player classic and it becomes a little bit more complex, but then they've worked your way up to that. So they've done a really nice job in this game of doing that. And finally, the last thing I just want to mention while I'm kind of doing this broad overview of the game is the interaction that occurs. So how is it then that I'm going to be interacting with you and with the other people playing? How does this interaction actually occur in the game? Is it just open dialogue? Well, yeah, there's lots of table talk and you're allowed to lie. You're allowed to be as conniving as you think you can and should be in this game, as long as you don't get busted, as long as you think it's progressing your case. But as you're moving around the ambassador's mansion or palace here, you will interact with other players. Your pawn will move around, and as soon as you get into the same room as each other, an interaction will occur. So at the beginning of the game, you're going to be assigned 5 cards, and these cards are the cards you're going to play during an interaction with somebody else. And depending on what they play as well, there's going to be certain consequences, either good or bad for you, based on how this all went down. So the first card you have is what's referred to as a neutral card. And here when you play a neutral card, you're basically saying, okay, buddy, I acknowledge you. It's kind of like when you're walking down the hallway and there's that guy and he knows who you are and he knows who you are, you know what I mean? And you kind of walk by and you end up giving each other the kind of awkward, like, Like that? Yeah, that's the neutral card. So then you also have what's referred to as the friendly card or the friendship card. Now, if players choose to play these cards during an interaction, it's basically like you go up to the person and give them a handshake going, hey buddy, like you obviously know this person from before. And if that person in return is friendly back to you, then you may be able to swap cards with each other. Or, you know, it's a good experience for both of you. Now we have the conflict cards. And there are 3 cards like this. There's the brass knuckles, there is the knife, and then there's the garrote. I think I'm pronouncing that right, but basically the choke string. Now, these cards here, if you choose to play them on somebody, you're basically saying, I'm taking offensive on you, I'm attacking you, essentially. I want something from you. And if they choose to play a conflict card at you as well, then it's resolved via rock, paper, scissors. So you see one trumps the other, it's that kind of mechanic. But then what's neat about the interactions is, again, the interaction is only ever going to be between 2 of the players. And the cards are chosen secretly and exchanged secretly. So the other players do not know what has happened during the interaction. If you played the friendly or the neutral card, you actually put that card back down into your interaction deck. It always stays there. You never discard that card. If you played a conflict card, that card gets discarded off to the side, and you cannot use that same conflict card again until you've used the rest of the conflict cards in your hand. So if you played, say for example, the brass knuckles in your first interaction, you want conflict in that interaction, then you're left with these 2 other cards in your hand that you must use the next time you want to use a conflict card during an interaction before you can ever get your other one back that you just played. Now, what's neat about this mechanic that I really like in this style of game is that if you're interacting with somebody and they're starting to beat up on you, you can see what they're playing. You know what weapons they've used and that they don't have available to them. You can see that in their hand. So then you can go back and interact with them knowing that you have a better chance of actually winning this rock, paper, scissors matchup because you know one of their cards is actually out and you can actually start kind of working that out. And what I like about that, this part of the game reminds me a little bit of Cash and Guns. And let me just briefly explain to you how Cash and Guns works, because at the beginning of the game in Cash and Guns, everybody's assigned a deck of cards for their player personality, and the majority of these cards are basically blanks. They're like click, 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 and you know they're basically you're bluffing, because what's going to happen is everyone's going to be pointing their guns at each other like this, and you're going to be giving them your most menacing stare. And then, and you're hoping that they don't know that you actually have a click, click, click card because you're just kind of bluffing. Now, when you actually resolve everybody who's pointing their guns at each other, when you actually resolve that, you'll see what cards people have actually played. And why that's important is because, you know, there's only so many actual cards that have a loaded gun in them. There's bang, and then there's, you know, bang, bang, bang. There's only, I think, 3 cards out of 8 that are actually have ammo in them. So if you're paying attention to what's going on, you can start seeing who's actually played ammo cards, and then you might have a better chance of knowing as the game goes on if they're bluffing or not. And so then you might start going, well, I'm going to get that guy because I'm quite sure that he has nothing in his barrel right now because I saw him play his bang, bang, bang and his bang card earlier. So you can start doing that. So the cool thing about this is during these interactions, if you start having multiple interactions with somebody, and you've already seen what they played, if they're confrontational interactions, then you can actually start managing your rock, paper, scissors mechanic a little bit better. And I really like that. So anyhow, I kind of digress, but I'm trying to integrate more of my thoughts into this as opposed to saving them for our final thoughts at the end. So then what actually happens during an interaction? So if it's neutral, nothing really happens. If it's friendly, neutral, the friendly person can actually give the neutral person a card. If it's friendly, both people can actually exchange a card. So it's all very, very nice so far. If it's a conflict interaction, then it's going to be rock, paper, scissors, you figure out how it is. But there are other things you can actually pick up along the way that might swing the conflict one way or the other. So for example, say the conflict ends, and suppose the active player won because he chose a weapon that actually trumps another weapon. Well, then the active player may have the choice of actually adding what's referred to as a hidden weapon. And this is something you can pick up along the game, and that basically adds another weapon value, if you will, to the conflict resolution. So if I were to reverse that, and if the active player had lost the conflict, he could then play his hidden weapon, which would up him 1 weapon level, and then it'd be a neutral conflict and nobody really would have won that. The other choice you could have had is you can play a bulletproof vest, and that trumps everything, and that protects you from actually losing the battle. Bulletproof vest, you're untouchable. So you can actually play that as well. Now, why this is important is once all that dust settles and somebody has actually lost the interaction, the person who won can actually have a choice as to what benefit they actually want to take from the other person for actually having that interaction with them. The first thing you can do is you can actually interrogate the person. And the cool thing about interrogating the person, this is one of the ways that you can actually start getting at, well, what is this person's loyalties? What is this person's nationality? Are we on the same side? So when you interrogate somebody, the person you're interrogating is going to take their neutral card. They're going to take their nationality card, and they're going to take any one of their weapon cards that they have in their deck. It just doesn't matter which one. They're going to shuffle it up, and they're going to give one, and you choose one card from it. And so you basically have a 1 in 3 chance of seeing what this person's nationality is. So you go, okay, great, thank you very much, and you put it back. You've interrogated this person, and hopefully you've actually learned some new information. Now, this is one way that you can actually start finding somebody else's nationality. The second way is actually in one of the rooms in the basement of the ambassador's palace, which is the computer room. And in this room, you have the ability to hack into other players or other spies that are scattered throughout the building, provided that they're in a computer-controlled or room with a computer in it. And those are indicated on the board. And if they're in that room, then you can actually hack into them. And by hacking into them, the mechanic is very much the same, but instead they take a neutral card and they take their nationality card and they shuffle them together, and then you get a look at one of them. So your odds are actually 1 in 2 or 50%. So they're actually better odds. So these are two of the ways that you actually find the nationality. So you can interrogate if you win a conflict. The second thing you can actually do is you can actually steal something from them. So they're going to have what's referred to as your item deck. And you can have up to 3 different items in your deck. And there's a whole variety of things that are kept inside an item deck. There's both the critical items, and these are things that are actually critical to winning the game. And these will include the nationality files, or the intel files, if you will, of both sides. So this actual file, this physical document, is what you need to have on your person when you get on the helicopter to fly away. So a lot of the game is trying to find these files. So you have the choice of actually stealing a card from somebody else and hopefully maybe getting one of these critical element cards, because another critical element is actually the bomb card. And of course, if you want to win just by bombing the other team's helicopter, well then obviously that's a critical element. But it's not quite that simple, because there are 2 helicopters in the game for each nationality, so you can't just bomb one, you need to bomb them both. So the game's not lost if one of your helis has been blown up, but you might want to take care. And sometimes you'll see people start actually bluffing for that. They'll actually go and blow up their own first helicopter to get people kind of go, what? You know, I thought you were on my side, or maybe not, you know. And so trying to, you know, kind of mess with people a little bit, kind of get that weird look in their eye. So you can do that. I'm not sure how good of a strategy that is, but you know, you do have options again to explore different strategies in this game, especially depending on the personality and the type of group that you're playing with. The other thing you can do if you win an interaction is you can actually injure the other guy. You can go bop, and that will actually limit his movement from that point on. Now, normally when you're scattering around through the embassy, you can move as far as you possibly want to, provided that you're not running into other people, because as soon as you run into somebody else, an interaction will occur, as I'm describing right now. But if you can get from one place to another and obey all the different movement rules, then good for you, it's no problem. But as soon as you get injured, you can move a maximum of 2 rooms. So the way you get uninjured, or to heal yourself up, is you go to the infirmary, which is up on the top floor, and as an action you can actually heal yourself up. Or one of the items in that you can pick up along the way might be a little first aid kit, and then as an action on your turn you can just patch yourself up a little bit. So the last thing that you can do if you win an interaction is nothing. You can say, you know what, I'm not going to take any of those, and the advantage of doing nothing is that it still allows you to take the benefit of the room that you're in, like the room, sometimes you have to take an action to get the benefit of the room, or take an action from one of your cards, because some of these cards are played as an action, because that might be more valuable or more important to you at a certain point in time in the game than maybe those other things that I described to you. So now would be a great time to talk about, well, what am I doing on my turn? Well, great question. I'm glad you asked. Well, there are 2 different scenarios that could really kind of play out. The first scenario you can do is in the room that you're in the embassy, you can play a card as an action, and then that's your turn. And the advantage of doing something like that is, like as I said before, you might be injured, you might need to heal yourself, or you may want to stay in a room 1 turn longer, and that would be your way to do so. The other thing that you can do is you can move anywhere you want, provided you've respected the movement conditions and that you're not interacting with people. You can move anywhere you want to go to any other room. So as an action, you can actually activate the room, and then you can take advantage of whatever benefits that room might have. And that's not true for all of the rooms, because some of the rooms actually have a continuous benefit while you're still in that room, which might be another reason why, if it's a good room to be in, you may choose on your second turn, rather than leave that room, to actually, as an action, use a card so you can stay there one additional turn. So now the last thing I need to cover is the building itself and all of the different rooms that are inside the building and how these rooms might be used for you to actually work yourself towards the game end. Because as I said before, we don't only have the social deduction, we actually have these actions that you can take along the way. And the cool thing about that, if you're not really big into the verbal part of social deduction kind of games, that's okay. You can still be that quiet, creepy little guy just walking around, you know, downloading viruses, creeping in on people, hacking into people, and doing all that on your own. Cool, good on you. You can still do that. This game is still for you. You can still have a great time doing it because you can still get the information you need via other sources, and that's by the room actions inside the room. So let's start actually at the top, or the terrace level of the building. Now you'll see right away the most important thing to you is going to be the helipad. Now the helipad is of course where the helicopter is actually going to come, and then you'll go up to the helipad and you'll be whisked away. Now to actually get the helicopter on the helipad, there's another room far away from it, actually down in the basement, which is basically your radio control room, where you need to be to actually call the helicopter to come and to actually land on the helipad itself. So that's a pretty neat dynamic that's inside the game, how it's spaced out, because you actually, your escape route is as far away as possible, more or less, from the area from which you need to call. So either your partner needs to call if you guys know that you're working together, or you need to call and then skedaddle up there before someone goes and bombs it if they're quite confident that you're making a run for it. So that's a pretty neat element of the game. Now also on the top floor we have what's referred to as the armory. Now the armory is a place where you would actually go, and as an action you would actually pick up another standard weapon. So as I told you before, your deck is going to start with 5 cards in it: your neutral card, your friendship card, and 3 of the standard weapons: 1 Garrett, 1 brass knuckles, and 1 knife. And so during interactions, when you only have those 3 cards, as I described before, people can start sorting out, well, what cards you might have left. So it's a bit of a disadvantage when you only have 3, because you need to use all of them before you get them all back in your hand again, and people can deduce what you might have, especially if they've been having these conflicts with you. So this is where you actually go get more standard cards, and it's unlimited. As long as you go there and take it as an action, you can add more standard cards into your hand. So then when you get to these conflict interactions, people are left guessing. If you have 6 weapons, for example, 6 of these standard weapons in your hand, they have no idea what's coming at them, and so they can't kind of break down the probabilities. So it's a really quite a cool way to add a little bit of uncertainty during these interactions, make you a little bit tougher, you know, when you're walking the hallways of the headquarters here. Also on the terrace is what's referred to as the X-ray room, and the X-ray room is really cool because throughout the building there are X-ray spots, or there's areas just outside of doors of rooms where there's basically an active X-ray going. So if you're in the X-ray room, and this is one of these rooms where the privilege is allowed to you as long as you're there, even on other people's turns, you get full advantage of this privilege. So if somebody else is walking through the X-ray area, you get to see everything that they're carrying, and so this can be highly advantageous, especially in some of these different bits of games. You can see maybe if they're carrying a certain file, maybe they're carrying one of the allegiances that are in the 3-player game. Yeah, so this is really advantageous because you can really start seeing what people are carrying on them and understanding, well, what an interaction with them might mean, or you might start understanding what their loyalties might be. So it's really quite neat. But the one thing I haven't talked to you about are the briefcases. Now, the briefcases are really neat because it's a way that you can actually shield yourself or one item that you're carrying from anybody who's in an X-ray room. So if someone's actually carrying a briefcase, then when you're in the X-ray room, you don't get the ability to see what's actually in that briefcase. I guess it's like a lead briefcase or something. Maybe it's made out of those lead aprons you get when you go to the dentist. He just wrapped it around his briefcase. Who knows? But the neat thing about these briefcases is they are stocked at the beginning of the game with a high probability that there's actually going to be important cards inside the briefcase. So I'm going to take a brief second to describe what these briefcases are. So at the beginning of the game, you're going to set up the briefcase to give you a higher probability of actually getting something important when you actually receive the briefcase. Now, first of all, you're going to take all 4 of the critical item cards. So you're going to take 2 bombs. So those, again, are critical items that may help you win. And you're going to take 2 of the intel cards of the different sides that are playing each other. So for example, if you got in your game Chinese spies and American spies, there's going to be a 1 Chinese intel card and 1 American intel card. So if you're the American, you need to escape with the Chinese intel card, and if you're Chinese, you need to escape with the American intel card. So you're going to take those 2 intel cards, you're going to take 2 bomb cards, and then you're going to just take 2 regular item cards. They can be anything, night vision goggles or whatever. So you're going to shuffle those 6 cards together, and then you're going to draw 2 and populate them in the 2 different briefcases that are actually inside the game. So there's a pretty good chance you're going to get something good, but you might still get something just kind of normal. So then the rest of those cards are shuffled back into the item deck, and away you go. The cool thing about the briefcase is they shield you from the X-ray, so you can carry, important documents in there, but they're hard to get into. You also, to get into a briefcase, you need the code cracker. You need another card that will allow you to actually open the briefcase. And so once you get the briefcase and you get the code cracker, then you can crack it open. And here's the cool part is when you see what's inside, then you have the choice of actually exchanging an item for that. So you might use it as a decoy, maybe. Somebody might say, oh, he's got the briefcase, he's got something important, I'm going to go get him. So you can use that as a decoy, or if you actually had a good card, you can swap it in and out, and then you can carry the briefcase. So you can even get onto the helicopter with a briefcase with the intel document inside, and that's okay too. So that's the briefcase. So once you get a briefcase, you also need the code cracker, and then you can open it up and see what's inside. There might be a good chance there's something good. So they're very valuable on a lot of different levels. But I digress, but I use this as an example to talk about this item. So what else do we have on the terrace floor? We've got the security headquarters, and this is neat because during an interaction between 2 other players, you get to see basically all the cards that are exchanged. So you get to kind of see, and you're that creepy security guard with 20 different monitors eating his popcorn, watching what's going on, and then you see, ooh, that looks interesting. Let me zoom my cameras in a little bit closer and see what that's all about. And you do, and you get to see those cards. So obviously you're going to gain information that way. Then we have what's referred to as the stock. You're going to see the stock on the terrace level and the basement level. And this is basically where you go, and as an action you say, okay, I'm going to take another item from the item card deck and add it to my hand. So this is basically where you go to get stuff. And this is where the important stuff might be. The critical items might be in here as well as the regular items. So the critical items you need for winning the game. The regular items you need just to help you survive through to the end of the game. Now the other elements I should point out that are very important for this game are the staircases. There are 2 staircases. There's a secure staircase, and this staircase you need a key to get through the locked door and get your way from one level to the next, and a key would be something you get from your item deck. And then you got the main staircase, which is basically probably the big palatial staircase when you walk in. And this is where you go to move between the floors. Now what's interesting about the staircases is they can be locked. On the main level, there's a room, there's like a central lock room, and when that room is activated by another player, it essentially locks the main staircase. Not the secure staircase, but the main staircase. So if you're on a floor, you can't get off, and you're stuck on whatever floor you're on as long as that person is activated that central lock. So there's a difference there, but you can still work your way, if you got the key, you can work your way through the secure staircase. So there's still kind of ways to get around. When someone's trying to target you, you might be able to use something to kind of slither around, do something else. So yeah, I hope you're starting to get that feel in this game, that there's a lot of different ways when people try to get you, that if you're at the right time, right place, you might be able to slither your way like the snaky spy that you are, and work your way around it. So or sometimes, which in my experience, one of the games, I just had a bad day at the office, and it was a little bit frustrating me. I was getting nothing in the item deck, and I kept losing my interrogations. I wasn't doing very well with my rock, paper, scissors, and that can happen in this game. So that might be a con for some people in this style of game, is if you're just having a rough day and nothing's getting going, then you're like, like that. That was hard. That was a tricky one. But the nice thing about this style of game is that does happen. Is that's not just for this game. That's a part of this genre. So if you like this genre, that's an experience that I'm sure that you may have had before. It's just a bad day at the office, but that's okay. Just play again because it goes over pretty quick. This game plays less than an hour. back to the building. So now let's talk about the terrace level. I've already talked about the central lock, but you also notice here we have the infirmary. So this is a place where you go and heal yourself up. So if you've been injured during a confrontational interaction, well then this is where you can go to kind of patch yourself up to improve your mobility again. And again, you'll see there's a secure staircase in the main staircase. But what dominates this floor is the ballroom. Now this is a neat part of the game, because the neat thing about the ballroom is this can only be activated once in the entire game. It can be activated by any player, but you go in the ballroom and you activate it and you say, okay, the ambassador is ready to give a speech, or the ambassador is ready to, you know, make his entrance. So everybody must descend upon the ballroom for this event, for this momentous event. This was why he invited you all here in the first place, other than all the other shady dealings that he's making with spies on the side. But you go there, and then during that time, this ballroom is a safe place. No interactions can actually occur during the ballroom. So this might be a way for you to kind of pull people back in and keep them close if you think they're starting to kind of work their way or taking advantage somewhere else. So that's the ballroom. Now let's go down into the basement. And again, the basement, you'll see the secure staircase, the regular staircase. We have the stock, which is again the same as the terrace. You get an item card. I already mentioned that. You have the radio room, and again I mentioned that. That's where you call your helicopter in, which is again far away from your helipad. You have your computer room, and this allows you to hack into all the other rooms that are controlled by computers, and that's indicated on the board. I won't get into it. And as I described before, this allows you a chance to hack in on other players who are in these computer controlled rooms, and you get a chance to see their nationality or loyalty. And then what I haven't talked about is we actually have the breaker box. Now the breaker box, as you might imagine, is you can go in there and turn off all the lights. Now the cool thing about that is now that you're actually working your way around the palace, if you go into a room where there's another spy and there normally would be an interaction, well, they don't see you. So you can kind of slither your way, you know, off, you know, outside. Just be very quiet, because although they can't see you, they probably could hear you. So you got to tiptoe past them, and you're fine. But are you? No, as you might imagine, there's another item in the deck, the night vision goggles. So if you go into a room, somebody might say, you know what, night vision goggles, I see you. Go, pow! And they have an opportunity to actually, it's like they've just won a conflict interaction without even playing any cards. They can still take the same reward you would from winning a conflict without actually having to play anything, because they saw you and they basically came up to you and kind of whap, you know, kind of whoopsie, they go whap and chop you on the side of the neck, you go down. So then they have the option of stealing, interrogating from you, just as they had before, right? So it's that's pretty cool. So the night vision goggles are another thing that would be quite handy. So that's the building and a kind of a brief overview of a lot of the different rooms and how these things might work. The one thing I haven't mentioned before too is when you actually have an interaction with another player, is you can never finish your turn in the same room as somebody else. So whoever wins that interaction has the ability to either kick the losing player out, or to sneak out, if you will, or they can sneak out themselves depending on what they want to do. I'm not going to get into great detail about that, but I just wanted to mention it. So that's pretty much it. Along the way, I've been trying to infuse some flavor in here, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about, you know, final thoughts, if you will. I'm hoping that you have a good feeling for how I feel about this game, but more importantly, I hope you have a good feeling about how you might feel about this game. Have I made some points that might resonate with you, going, yes, this is what I like, or no, this is what I don't like, so that you can make an informed opinion. That, after all, is the whole point of you watching my evening news review. So you can walk away from this review and go to the water cooler tomorrow, and you can have an informed opinion about what it is you just watched during this newscast. Now, I want to briefly talk about the theme. Now, before I showed this picture, and of course I said this got my wife into this theme. Okay, I'm exaggerating a little bit, but the thing about this theme, I really like it. I feel like I'm James Bond in this movie, and I feel that, you know, somewhere along the line there's a, you know, I've got some other spies working with me, but I don't know who they are. And the reason why I don't know who they are is because they might compromise the mission, of course. And I really like that feel, and I find a lot of parts of this game help me feel that more. Now, again, like I said before, I played this on the Vassal module, so I know that this feeling will improve when I actually have the physical bits and I actually have the ability to play this face-to-face with somebody, and I'm willing to take that risk. So for that reason, I will back this on Kickstarter, because from what I played on the Vassal module, it has highlighted to me that I think this will be a really excellent game to play with people who want to kind of grab into this theme. Now, the thing I do not like about this theme and I had the same complaint for K2, the mountain climbing game, is that the end is anticlimactic for me. And what I mean by that is, if you've played K2, you have so many turns, I think 18 days, and you get to the top of the mountain, and you can basically suicide your climber. So on the very last day, you can make a peak for the summit, and then the game's over, and you might score, a perfect score. You might, that might get you the additional points you need for the win. But then if you actually analyze what you actually have left in your hand, you're like, you know what, but he would have died tomorrow. Like he was dead. He was a goner. But he basically made a suicide climb for the summit, and that was it. So similarly in this game is when you actually are working as a team, but one person basically gets the glory. They jump on the helicopter and they fly away. Well, I guess God save the Queen, glory to Rome, whatever you want to call it. There's one spy left behind. He's like, hey, what about me? Too bad, buddy. You're on your own. And so for that reason, you may feel like if you're that spy that's left behind, you may feel that the victory is a little bit shallow or hollow, because especially if you don't feel that you've really contributed to that overall victory, if your other opponent or your other teammate, I guess, or partner was able to get a lot of that stuff on their own, then it may feel like a little bit of a hollow victory. Just like if I play K2 and you get to the top, I feel a little bit hollow about that. Now that's just to do with this genre of game as well. Sometimes, like you're playing werewolves and you're like killed, but then like you win and you're like, okay, I guess, sure, yay. So that's the one kind of thing about this style of game for me. It always, like if you're that guy, charging through the door, you're Jason Bourne, and great, good for you, like you're the hero. Well, it's something you need to be aware of, because if you're playing with somebody who doesn't really feel that they were integrated or a part of that experience, then it may be difficult for them to come back. So that's something just to be aware of, especially depending on the group you're playing with. You know the personalities of who you're playing with, and you might know if that might bother somebody more than another person. So it's just something to be aware of. That's all I'm going to say about that. So that's about it. I haven't gotten to all the granular points about all the videos. I've tried to highlight all the positive things along the way, because there are a lot of positive things along the way. And I hope that this has been an informative video for you. I thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, please leave some comments below, or come find me on Facebook, Connect More Board Games, and give me a like and follow along so I can do future videos for you. So thank you very much, and stay classy, board game geeks.